Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Joe Tyrrell and welcome back to the runoff. It's the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. Joining me is just Toby this week. You'll be hearing from Cam later, but Toby, you're here recording with me now. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Joe. How about yourself?
I am very, very well, thank you, Toby. Have enjoyed a weekend of sun and the Belgian Grand Prix, and we're going to talk all about it. Now, it was unsurprisingly, although given the situation we were handed at the start of the weekend where Max and Leclerc had these penalties, probably weren't expecting Max to win, but it was pretty emphatic.
Yeah, a lot of the bookmakers had Verstappen as the favourite to win, but when you kind of actually looked at it, it seemed like quite a difficult task to get all the way through the field and all the way up to the top. But with the incident on lap one, it kind of handed it almost perfectly and straight to him. So you can look at it that way, is that he kind of got lucky with the safety car, but then at the same time, you can't take away the fact that he drove an absolutely mega race and probably deserved the win in the end.
Yeah, he couldn't have asked for better fortunes, really, could he? Like a great start just in general, like he made up places on the first lap, but the safety car as a result of Lewis's crash with Fernando, which we'll touch on in a bit, was just perfect timing for him. And it's almost as if the stars are aligning now for a second Formula One World Championship.
Yeah, everything's fallen into place. I think he was up to eighth on lap four, and then off the safety car restart, managed to pick off, I think, three places within the next lap. So it was up to fifth by lap five or something like that, which kind of just shows how good he is as a driver, how strong the Red Bull car is, but also how a little bit of luck in Formula One can go a long way. And that luck was handed to him and not Charles Leclerc, which I think Red Bull will be very happy about.
Yeah. Um, what is remarkable now is that Charles Leclerc, his bad form and Ferrari's bad form, has now seen Charles Leclerc drop out of second in the standings and down to P3. And I was once talking about Charles Leclerc's lead being unreachable, and now we're
I
talking about
think I was
Leclerc.
agreeing with you, though, to be
Yeah,
fair. I
and
was one of
now
the people
Leclerc's
that
down
thought
P3.
he would do really well and
Yeah,
potentially fight for the championship. But at the same time, I mentioned it before we start recording, Joe. The difference now between Ferrari and Mercedes in the constructors is only 41 points.
yeah,
So with 8 races left and the gap being only 41, we could well see Mercedes finishing second in constructors at the end of the season, which no one thought of at any point this season, I don't think.
no. Well, we are now looking at a two-way battle for third, and well, can anybody damage Red Bull's title ambitions, or it's damage limitation now for the other teams, isn't it? Because realistically, Max is going to win the World Drivers' Championship, and now Perez is P2. Despite his poor form, I really think he's been so poor lately. Because you look at the start he had in Belgium, he was so disappointing,
It
and the
was it
fact
was
that
really poor.
Max then went and won that race, that should have been Perez's race, really, when you think of the opportunity he had from further up the grid. Really disappointing weekend for him, but he finds himself P2 in the standings, so he won't be complaining, will he?
No, I think in his post-race interview he was annoyed with himself, and I think quite understandably because, like you said, his start was so poor. But in the whole scheme of things, second place in World Championship. I think he's only won one race this season.
Yeah, Monaco, right?
Yeah. So being second with only one race win, I think he can't complain at all about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he will be happy. That's what he's there to do. He's there to be a second driver. He obviously fancies himself as more, but what can you do when you've got Max Verstappen alongside you? Not much, that's for sure. Well, we said earlier we'd hear from Cameron in this video, in this podcast, and you will do. So let's catch up with him from very, very sunny Greece.
Right, hi guys. Coming to you from Rhodes in Greece. I hope that Joe and Toby have discussed a fair bit about the race so far, but thought I'd drop in a few of my thoughts as well. Just start with the fact that Max Verstappen is a little bit good at driving F1 cars. I'm just not quite sure how easy that was for him, like how it could have been so easy, but it just was. Came from 10th on the grid to win at Hungary, 14th on the grid here. just getting a little bit ridiculous right now. But one thing it does raise in my mind is just some slight questions about Sergio Perez. Obviously, he's doing what Red Bull need him to do. They don't need him to win the races. They just need him there to pick up points that Verstappen doesn't get, and he picked up second, so that's all he could have done. But you're starting so many places ahead of Verstappen, and on, lap 10, 11, you're getting passed by him, and you finish 18 seconds behind him in the same car, and he started, 10, 11, 12 good places behind you. Beggars belief. And you can't even really blame Perez's poor start, because he got ahead of all the people that passed him by, pretty soon afterwards. I mean, obviously the Hamilton and Alonso crash happened, and he'd already passed Russell and then those two by the time that happened. So I just a little bit surprised at how slow Perez was in comparison to Verstappen. But yeah, fair play to Max. I think he was the class of the field yet again. But yeah, I think that this is... I mean, we were saying it before the summer break, and yeah, Max Verstappen has won the 2022 Drivers' Championship, and Red Bull have won the Constructors. So everyone else just might as well look to 2023. I just want to see close fighting, especially at the front. Like a good close midfield battle is great, but it's got nothing on a fight for the win. And this race just didn't have a fight for the win. The opening couple of laps were great, and to be honest, I just dozed off. It was a pretty dull race from there on out, just Verstappen cruising away, as we've seen so many times in the past, 6 months plus last year a couple of times. So, a bit disappointing really, because I had held out hope that Verstappen and Leclerc would be battling through the pack together, and there'd be quite a few battles between them two on track, and there'd be perhaps an unexpected podium or something along the lines that happened. And yeah, didn't quite deliver. DRS and that Red Bull straight line speed just made Verstappen's life a lot easier, making passes down the straight, and then yeah, just cruised to victory. So there's nothing much more you can say other than the fact that Verstappen was just clearly a class apart and is going to win the title. So yeah, as for everyone else, the Lewis Alonso incident, I mean, Lewis has said it's his fault, and yeah, it was his fault. Obviously he was ahead, so Alonso could have backed out because Lewis was ahead, but at the same time Lewis just cut across sooner than he should have done and didn't leave enough room, which ruined his race. But then again, I just don't think that would have made too much difference to the outcome. I think he maybe would have finished fourth and Russell would have pushed down a place, and that's about all you can really say. So disappointing for Mercedes. They've obviously had a pretty poor weekend. Disappointing for Ferrari. Sainz starts on pole. Leclerc starts only a place behind Verstappen and was miles off in the race. So yeah, Red Bull yet again. I must say, looking forward to other races. It looks like McLaren are going to be awful at Monza, while Williams are going to be pretty damn good, based on the speed that those two teams had this weekend on the straight. So yeah, overall, it was quite a disappointing race. I'm glad to see Spa stay on the 2023 calendar, renewed for next year, but I hope that we have some cars that are quick enough to fight Red Bull, because all in all, it's great and all Verstappen, coming from near the back to win, but I'd much rather have a close fight, and it wasn't a close fight.
So Toby, our winners and losers now. We're going to move on to those. Cameron hasn't sent these in, but me and you, we've picked 2 winners, 2 losers from the Belgian Grand Prix, which was confirmed to be extended as well. So we'll be going back to Spa next year, which is good news for us all. But we'll start, Toby, start with the losers this week. Who are your losers?
So my losers are Ferrari. So when you look at the race result and you see that they did end up finishing 3rd and 6th and getting a total of, let me do the maths quickly, 23 points, you think, okay, that's not horrendous. Could have been worse, because when you think of losers, you think maybe not even finishing in the top 10. But if you saw the race, you'd understand where I'm coming from. We'll start with Carlos Sainz. He obviously started from pole, was leading for a fair bit of the race, but then as soon as Max Verstappen came through, he didn't really stand a chance, and then ended up losing out to Sergio Perez as well. But the reason I think Carlos Sainz is a loser in my mind is because of how close. This isn't more. This is more of a fault of Carlos Sainz than George Russell. George Russell drove immensely and ended up only finished 2.1 seconds behind him. But in my opinion, the gap should never have been allowed to get to 2.1. Whether this was down to the strategy or just some problems whilst driving, but I know Carlos was told to miss a lot of bumps and corners, which he seemed to be hitting, which obviously affected him and his car. So I feel like he should have finished P2 if you're looking at where he started and what he was doing during the race. So I feel like that's why he's a loser. And then Charles Leclerc, I feel like this is more a bit of unluck, a strategic error again from Ferrari, but he ended up finishing P6. With 2 laps to go, he was P5 and had about 15 seconds on Fernando Alonso. They pitted him to try and get the fastest lap. He ended up not getting the fastest lap and losing a position to Fernando Alonso, which he did gain back, but then sped in the pit lane after the race and got a 5-second penalty, which pushed him back down to 6th. So in the end, they lost 3 points, kind of, because they lost the position, which lost them 2, and the fastest lap, which they never got. So I feel like Ferrari just need to forget about this weekend, and they're confident with how they're going to perform in Zandvoort because the track suits them more than Red Bull in their mind, because Red Bull prefer kind of the faster tracks, so like Monza,
it's gone. Time's gone by those days when Red Bull preferred the twisty turny tracks and Mercedes wanted the power heavy tracks. It's now the other way around.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what Ferrari can do in Zandvoort, and obviously we'll speak about that in a bit. But this weekend just has not been good for Ferrari overall.
Like, we've got used to Ferrari's absolute capitulations, let's be real here. But this, I think their good start has slightly masked how much of a capitulation this is. Like, let's look at it this way. We were talking about them having a insurmountable lead at the top, and now we're talking about them scrapping for third. This has been a disaster of almighty proportions, really. And it just takes the shine off of what could have been a really good season.
Yeah, it's all gone downhill very quickly.
Yeah.
And when I say very quickly, very, very quickly.
Yeah. Very, very quickly indeed. And I honestly, I don't see them getting out of it anytime soon either. But we'll have to wait and see. Our next loser is another team. My loser this week are a team who I've not got much time for this season. McLaren. I feel like they've messed around Daniel Ricciardo. They've screwed him over a bit. They've sacked him off last week. They want to get Oscar Piastri in clearly. But this week they've got no points. They finished, was it 12th and 14th or 12th and 16th?
12th and 15th.
12th and 15th. So I was in the middle. They've just had after a weekend where you thought, how are we going to sort of shake off the criticism we faced from Ricciardo? How are we going to sort of detract from those headlines? You need to go and put in a good result, a good performance. And they've not done that. So they just look a bit silly, in my opinion.
Yeah. Daniel Ricciardo was running in the top 10 and looked like he was going to get a points finish. And then pitted and came out behind traffic and never managed to get past it. So it's just another one of those weeks. As for Lando, he had a very quiet race.
Yeah.
Like an extremely quiet race. It was really surprising. But I don't really have too much to say on McLaren. It's their whole driver situation next year or for next year, I think, has been running on their minds quite a bit. And I feel like it probably has affected their race performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. Like, well, there's just going to be so many distractions around. So many people are asking questions. And for Ricciardo, to be fair, to be close to a points finish, he was quite far off in the end. But when you think about it, he was in the points. You just can't help but feel like that's played a factor. And I think their season's going to peter out as well to a disappointing end. It's been a disappointing season so far for them. Really disappointing, given where they were in Barcelona. But I just think, what a disappointing race when you needed a performance to shrug off any criticism or detract from the headlines. You could do without a 12th and 15th place finish. So McLaren are my losers this week. Just quickly, do you think Oscar Piastri will end up there?
But from what's been said over the weekend, it seems as though Alpine are very confident that they will have him.
Yeah.
Because of the contracts and all of this. So maybe that's just Otmar Zaffanau just being confident for the cameras. But I really have no idea. If he goes to Alpine, then McLaren have a big problem, as we mentioned in the summer break podcast we did. So
who do they go and get him?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I've heard that Alpine want to sign Pierre Gasly.
Two French drivers for a French team.
The only issue with that is Ocon and Gasly hate each other, so that'll be quite fun. But McLaren are looking really in the mud.
Yeah, they could do without performance issues when they've got driver issues. So disappointing week for McLaren, and I fear it's only going to get worse for them. But moving on to some more positive news, Red Bull. They are my winners this week, Toby, and they're going to be winners of everything this year. They're going to win the constructors. They're going to win the drivers. They are probably going to get a 1-2 in the drivers as well. They have been utterly dominant again.
Yeah. All I can say is well done. They've just been absolutely mega. They got the fastest lap. You could see how quick Verstappen looked in qualifying. And then he just went and did it in the race. One thing I will say is, though, George Russell was matching Max Verstappen's lap times in the race when he was chasing down Carlos Sainz. So
optimism for Mercedes.
Yeah.
They've always had that with that around in they've always had that race pace, so Mercedes at times.
Yeah.
It's just weird, but Red Bull just ridiculous. Like Max is on another planet in that car. He clearly is the best driver, and Ferrari making themselves look like idiots. But
I feel like in any car, Max would be able to do well.
Yeah.
Even who's bottom at the moment? Even the Williams, like he's fine points. he's just on another level at the moment that no one can compete with. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. We've spoken enough about Max. He's my winner this week. Your winner. Who is it, Toby?
I've chosen Alpine. In the end, they got a 5th and 7th place finish, so 16 points. But they're just very consistent and look very good. They are the best of the rest at the moment this season, which many thought McLaren would be. But after the first lap incident, which we haven't really spoken about too much.
We'll touch on that in a minute.
I think Fernando Alonso finishing 5th, he will be very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Alpine just looked really, really solid. Like, it reminded me of McLaren from the last 2-3 years. Like, just getting results. They are doing what they have to do. They know they probably can't compete for the race wins, really. But if there's an opportunity for a podium, they're there or thereabouts. And if not, they're 5th, 6th, and 7th. Like, they are picking up results, and they were 5th and 7th this weekend. Probably the best they could have expected. So yeah, a really, really positive weekend for them. We're going to quickly touch on that first lap incident because an honourable mention in the losers section is certainly Lewis Hamilton. An honourable mention in the winners section is Alex Albon. We're not going to talk about him. We're going to talk about Lewis Hamilton and that first lap incident. First and foremost, it was 100% his fault, right?
Yeah, it was, and he admitted that as well.
Yeah, so it is Lewis's fault, and he's admitted that. Did you think Alonso's comments after the race, or sorry, on the radio, were a bit harsh, saying he only knows how to win from P1?
I think they were
race from P1,
but it was a definite kind of in the moment heated thing, and that's something that Lewis was actually questioned by someone from Sky Sports, asking if he cared about what Fernando Alonso said, and his response was, "It's a heat of the moment thing. It's nothing that I'm going to worry about."
Yeah.
So I feel like if it was the other way around, Hamilton would have made a comment as well.
Yeah.
Probably not the same one, obviously not the same one, but he would have made a comment which would have hurt potentially Alonso. But it's just one of those things. When someone squeezes you and forces you almost into a crash, you're gonna say something on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah. He was pretty angry, Fernando Alonso. Like, to say Hamilton only knows that to win from P1, which I think I'll be doing a video on later in the week, was pretty harsh. So, yeah. I don't really know what else to say on it other than it was just harsh. But the two have got history, haven't they? Like, you go back to Hamilton's first season in Formula One. Wasn't a great relationship there at McLaren. But you'd thought as they'd got older, as sort of thing, they'd got a bit more respect for each other. And you saw the scenes at Alonso's first retirement in 2018. You sort of thought they'd grown up, matured a bit. Well, they have. And they sort of were different drivers now, but clearly there is sort of still something that bubbles under the surface there.
Yeah, it's one thing I will say quickly. I know we've passed on the winners and losers, but that happened at the end of the Kemmel Straight, or in Telecom, and that's exactly where all the action happened. Yep. So if any of you were listening or watching were lucky enough to even go to Spa, and then were also lucky enough to be at the Kemmel Straight, you've had a great weekend.
Yeah, you've had the perfect weekend. You've got all the action. There was loads of action on that corner. So
there were some double overtakes as well.
Yeah.
3 abreast going down. Oh, it was great.
Yeah, a good weekend for the supporters if you were at that position on the track. But we're going to move on now to the upcoming Dutch Grand Prix and our second race in recent years at Zandvoort. So, Toby, the Dutch Grand Prix last year, I think there were 2 races that I thought were awful. The Qatar Grand Prix and the Dutch Grand Prix. I think I live blogged them both and they were both awful, in my opinion.
I don't even remember what happened at the last Dutch. All I remember was the fans being amazing. But
I don't either.
That is kind of expected with the Dutch fans because they love it. They go for it, don't they?
The only thing I enjoyed about that race last season was the fact that some of the I think, is it the Tarzan curve or the Tarzan bank?
Yeah.
It looked cool, and that's about it.
I'm just having a quick look now.
Max won, but that's as expected.
Hamilton P2 with fastest lap. Bottas P3, so it was a Mercedes double podium.
Yep. That was sort of the classic podium last year.
Checo down in 8th.
Really?
Pierre Gasly 4th. That's not happening.
No.
Even Robert Kubica had a race. How can we?
He did because Kimi got COVID, didn't he? Like midway.
That was how can we forget about Kubica?
That was like on the Friday as well. Like,
yeah.
He caught COVID mid-weekend, and that was like the weekend he announced he was retiring as well.
Yeah.
That was a stinker for Kimi. Yeah, not ideal. But we're hoping for a more entertaining race this season. Do you think we'll get it?
With Ferrari's hopes, then I hope we do. But let's be honest. I think it would be a very safe bet to say Verstappen's going to win.
Speaking of safe bets, we're going to hear from Cam now, who's going to lead us into the prediction section of our video.
In terms of the predictions, guys, I thought I'd also help you out because I know I'm the man clued in with all the stats. So I thought I'd do it again, even though I'm away. And just an update, obviously, after Belgium, the predictions. Joe, you got all 3 wrong. You predicted George Russell to have a pole, Hamilton to win, and well, that was over within a couple of turns. And Yuki Tsunoda to finish in top 7, so you scored a grand total of 0 points. Toby again predicted Russell pole, that was miles off, and the surprise to Toby was Ricciardo top 6, miles off. But he did get Max win correct, so that's a point for Toby. And me, well, technically, I predicted Max to get pole, but he won qualifying but didn't actually get pole position. So unfortunately, because of the grid penalty, which we didn't know was going to happen before we predicted it, that's wrong. But I did predict Max to win, which was correct, and Lando podium, which was wrong. So the scores after Spa, Toby's top on 8, I'm second on 6, and Joe is bottom with 5 points. I also thought I'd do my predictions for Zandvoort this weekend as well, on top of it. just for, helping out. And I'm going to go with what I went with this week. Max pole, Max win. And surprise will be that... what do I think surprise will be? I think that Lando and Ricciardo will both finish in the top 7. And I think that's a surprise. But if you're going to call me out for it, I'll say top 6. But I'm going to say top 7 and hope that I get away with it.
So Cameron there has kindly pointed out that I am bottom of the standings, Toby. Yeah, another shocker from me. Unsurprising.
It was a shocker for us both because we both predicted George Russell.
At least you got something. Like I just
To be fair, we expected rain on the Saturday, which never actually came during qualifying.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we predicted Russell. Yeah. So I think we can let ourselves off there, but pretty poor all weekend. Pretty poor weekend all round. So hopefully we'll enjoy some more luck this weekend. So who are you going for, Toby? Your winner, your race winner, your pole position, and your surprise of the weekend.
So pole position, with the Ferrari's confidence, I'm going to back them. But I don't know who to back.
Okay.
Whether Sainz or Leclerc. I'll go for a Leclerc pole. Let's hope he gets some good luck for once. Verstappen victory. And my surprise will be a double Alpine top 6.
Double Alpine top. That is brave because they finished 5th and 7th. So you've got to think you probably expect Lewis Hamilton to finish 2 races in a row. Surprise, double Alpine top 6. Fair enough. I'm going to go with a Max pole, a Max victory, and I'm going to go with a Aston Martin top 8. Can I get away with that?
I think Seb was 8th this race.
Was it? All right, that's maybe not then.
I've already forgotten. That's really bad. Yeah, Seb was 8th. You can if you want.
No, I feel it's a bit of a cop-out, top 8. I'm going to go with a Daniel Ricciardo top 7.
Yeah, we'll allow that.
Daniel, you're racing for your seat in Formula 1 and you're racing for my points in the prediction series. So fingers crossed, Daniel Ricciardo can secure a top 7, not a W. And Max will secure a W for me. But Toby, that's all for this week. Thank you for joining me for the first of 3 back-to-back podcast weekends.
I will see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, I won't. I'll see you later in the week for the Dutch Grand Prix. And then where are we off after that?
Monza, I believe.
Monza,
then Singapore after Monza.
That's nice that we're finishing this sort of triple header with a half-decent track.
We'll see some speed.
Yeah, because I'm not optimistic for this weekend in Belgium. But nonetheless, thank you for joining me again, Toby. The Netherlands. Yeah, sorry. It's been another long weekend, as you can probably tell. But we'll be back next week to reflect on the Dutch Grand Prix. Until then, I've been Joe Tyrrell, and that's been Toby McCluskey, and we'll see you next weekend.
Michael,